The Great Hall of the Galactic Dominion stretched across miles of polished metal and glowing crystal. Thousands of alien warriors filled the massive space, their voices creating a thunderous roar that shook the walls. This was the annual War Council, where the three most powerful species in the galaxy planned their next conquests. Commander Gorthak stood 20 feet tall on the central platform. His thick armor plates gleamed under the bright lights. Each plate was harder than diamond and had been earned in countless battles across the stars. The Vorthak were born warriors with natural weapons that could cut through steel and strength that could crush mountains. To his left sat the Quilith delegation, their pale blue skin glowing softly in the dim light. They needed no weapons or armor. Their minds were their greatest tools. A single Quilith could reach into an enemy's thoughts and crush their will to fight. Entire planets had surrendered without a single shot being fired when the Quilith whispered fear into their minds. On his right, the Nexari representatives shifted and changed as they spoke. One moment they looked like tall, graceful beings with silver skin. The next they resembled any of a dozen different species. The Nexari were masters of deception. They could become anyone, infiltrate any society, and destroy their enemies from within. For 3,000 years, these three species had ruled the galaxy together. No world had ever successfully resisted them. No species had ever proven strong enough to stand against their combined might. Gorthak raised one massive arm, and the hall fell silent. His voice boomed across the space like thunder. Brothers and sisters of the Dominion, we gather once more to claim new worlds for our empire. Our scouts have discovered over 200 new species in the outer rim systems. Most are weak farming worlds that will surrender quickly, but I have found something interesting. A holographic display appeared above the platform, showing a small blue and green planet spinning slowly in space. The planet looked peaceful, with white clouds swirling over vast oceans and green continents. This world is called Earth. Gorthak continued.
It is inhabited by a species that calls itself human.
Our initial scans show they have no natural armor, no telepathic abilities, and cannot change their shape. Their technology is primitive by our standards. They still use chemical explosives and metal projectiles as weapons. Laughter erupted from the audience. The sound was terrifying. A mix of growls, hisses, and alien sounds that would have frozen human blood. But to the Dominion, it was simply amusement. Veltar, the lead Quilith mind reader, spoke without moving his lips. His words appeared directly in everyone's thoughts. These humans sound weaker than the Zenthari grass-eaters we conquered last year. At least the Zenthari had thick hides. These humans seem to have nothing at all. More laughter filled the hall. The Zenthari had surrendered within hours of first contact, offering their entire planet's resources in exchange for mercy. Zixra of the Nexari stood and shifted into a rough approximation of human shape. The form was tall and thin with pale skin and no visible natural weapons. "Look at this pathetic form," she said, her voice filled with disgust. "They have no claws, no fangs, no poison glands. Their skin is so thin it can be cut with their own primitive tools. How did such a weak species even survive long enough to develop space travel?" Gorthak activated another display, showing human cities from orbit. The buildings were small and fragile-looking compared to Dominion architecture. No mighty fortresses or impenetrable barriers, just glass and metal structures that looked like they would collapse if a Vorthak sneezed on them. "Their military forces are equally pathetic," Gorthak said. "They still fight each other over small patches of land and limited resources. They have no unified government and spend most of their time in conflict with their own kind. A species that cannot even unite against itself will surely crumble before our might." Young Vorthak warriors in the audience began volunteering for the mission. To conquer Earth would be an easy victory to add to their service records. Some even suggested it would be too easy to bring honor to their names. Captain Thekmore, a veteran Vorthak with scars covering his armor, stood to address the crowd. "Commander, perhaps we should give this mission to our newest recruits. They need practice, and this human world sounds like a perfect training exercise. Our experienced warriors would find no challenge in such easy prey." The suggestion brought approving sounds from all three species. It made perfect sense. Why waste their elite forces on such a weak target, when they could use it to train the next generation of Dominion warriors? Veltar projected his thoughts again, this time with what passed for amusement among his kind. "I have scanned the human data files our spies intercepted. These creatures actually fear death. They spend enormous amounts of effort trying to avoid injury or destruction. Most species in the galaxy accept death as part of conquest. But humans seem terrified of it. They will likely surrender the moment they see our ships. This revelation caused the greatest laughter yet. To the Dominion species, fear of death was the ultimate weakness. The Vorthak were bred for battle and welcomed glorious death in combat. The Quillith viewed physical death as merely a transition to a higher mental state. The Nexari could regenerate from almost any injury, making death nearly impossible for them. Zixra shifted back to her natural form, her features flowing like liquid silver. Perhaps we should not even send warriors, she suggested mockingly. We could send our cargo haulers and civilian transports. The humans would probably surrender to our merchant vessels. Gorthak looked at the data one more time. Every scan, every piece of intelligence, every analysis pointed to the same conclusion. Humans were among the weakest species the Dominion had ever encountered. They possessed none of the natural advantages that had allowed other species to put up even token resistance. Very well, he declared. Earth will serve as a training ground for our junior officers. We will send the 47th Training Fleet under Commander HFY. This will be good practice for troops who have never seen real combat. The 47th Training Fleet was barely worthy of the name. It consisted of older ships with basic weapons, commanded by officers who had never fought a real battle. It was the fleet used for conquering agricultural worlds and mining colonies that always surrendered without fighting. Young Commander HFY stood proudly when his name was called. This would be his first independent command, and he was grateful for such an easy assignment. He had worried that his first mission might be dangerous or complicated. Instead, he was being given what amounted to a peaceful occupation of a defenseless world. I estimate the operation will take less than one standard day, HFY announced confidently. These humans will surrender the moment they see our ships in their skies. The War Council approved the mission with barely any discussion. Earth was classified as a routine training exercise rather than an actual military operation. The paperwork was filed under peaceful annexation of primitive worlds. As the Great Hall began to empty, alien warriors shared jokes about the weak humans and their pathetic world. Some placed bets on how quickly the surrender would come. The longest estimate was 6 hours from first contact to complete submission. None of them had any way of knowing that they were about to encounter something the galaxy had never seen before. In all their thousands of years of conquest, the Dominion had never faced a species that became more dangerous when it was cornered. They had never fought an enemy that treated survival itself as a weapon. They had never met humans. The laughter echoing through the Great Hall would soon turn to something very different. But for now, the greatest military powers in the galaxy prepared to teach a weak little species about the realities of conquest. They had no idea they were about to become students instead of teachers. 6 months had passed since the War Council meeting. Commander HFY stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the viewing screen. The blue planet looked even more defenseless up close than it had in the intelligence reports. He could see the small satellites orbiting the world, primitive machines that barely qualified as technology. All ships prepare for atmospheric entry, HFY ordered. Remember, this is a training exercise. We are simply here to accept their surrender and begin the occupation process. The 47th Training Fleet consisted of 12 vessels, each carrying 500 Vorthak warriors. They were young soldiers, most of whom had never seen actual combat. Their commanders had told them this would be an easy first mission. A simple show of force and the humans would give up. The fleet descended through Earth's atmosphere, their shields glowing bright orange from the friction. They chose to land in major population centers across the planet. The plan was simple: appear in the skies above the largest cities, broadcast the surrender demand, and wait for the humans to comply. HFY's ship positioned itself above a large city the humans called Sol. The city sprawled for miles, filled with buildings made of glass and concrete. Millions of humans lived and worked in those fragile structures. From orbit, they looked like insects in a hive. The surrender broadcast went out in all human languages simultaneously. People of Earth, you are now subjects of the Galactic Dominion. Your resistance is futile. Your technology is primitive. Your species is weak. Surrender now and you will be allowed to live as servants of the Empire. Resist and you will be destroyed. HFY waited for the inevitable response. Every other species had reacted the same way. First came shock, then fear, then the desperate surrender messages from world leaders begging for mercy. Instead, alarms began blaring across the bridge. Commander, We are detecting launches from multiple sites across the planet. His sensor officer reported with confusion in his voice. The humans are firing weapons at us. HFY almost laughed. What could their primitive weapons possibly do against Dominion shields? He watched the screen as dozens of missiles rose from Earth's surface, trailing fire and smoke. They were chemical rockets, exactly the kind of basic technology he expected from such a backward species. The missiles struck the shields and exploded harmlessly. The fleet did not even shake from the impacts. See? HFY said to his crew. Weak and foolish. They waste their ammunition on attacks that cannot hurt us. Send word to all ships. Begin landing operations. The landing craft descended toward Seoul carrying the first wave of Vorthak warriors. These young soldiers were excited, eager to begin what they thought would be an easy occupation. They had been told the humans would run and hide the moment they saw the Dominion's might. Lieutenant Kim Tae-ho watched the alien landing craft descend from his position on a Seoul rooftop. He was a Navy SEAL, part of South Korea's most elite special operations unit. When the alien ships had appeared in Earth's skies, every military force on the planet had mobilized for war. Kim spoke quietly into his radio. All teams, remember your training. These aliens think we are weak. Let us show them what humans do when someone threatens our home. The landing craft touched down in a large plaza in the center of Seoul. The rear ramp lowered and Vorthak warriors marched out in perfect formation. They were massive creatures, each one standing over 20 feet tall with armor that looked indestructible. Their weapons hummed with energy as they scanned the area for targets. The plaza appeared empty. The Vorthak commander at the scene, Officer Rektos, felt satisfied. The humans were hiding just as predicted. This would be even easier than expected. Then the first explosion hit. The blast came from underneath the plaza itself. Kim's team had spent hours planting charges in the sewers and underground passages beneath the landing zone. The explosion tore through the pavement and caught a dozen Vorthak warriors in the blast. Their armor protected them from the worst of it, but several fell, injured and stunned. Before the aliens could react, gunfire erupted from every building surrounding the plaza. Human soldiers fired from windows, rooftops, and doorways. The bullets could not pierce Vorthak armor, but they struck joints and weak points that the aliens had never thought to protect. Rektos roared in anger and pain as a bullet struck the gap between his shoulder plates. These humans were not running. They were not hiding. They were fighting back with a ferocity he had never encountered. Return fire, he ordered, but his troops were in disarray. They had trained for ceremonial occupations, not actual combat. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, shooting and then disappearing before the Vorthak could target them. Kim watched through his rifle scope as the aliens tried to organize a defense. They were strong and well-armed, but they moved in predictable patterns. They had no experience with urban warfare, no understanding of how to fight an enemy that refused to face them directly. Team 2, flank left, Kim ordered calmly. Team 3, prepare the next charges. Team 4, fall back to position Bravo. His teams moved with practiced precision. They had spent years training for exactly this type of combat. Every SEAL knew how to fight against a superior enemy. You did not face them head-on. You hit them where they were weak, then vanished before they could strike back. Across the planet, similar scenes played out in every city where the Vorthak had landed. In New York, Marines used the subway system to move beneath the alien forces, attacking from unexpected angles. In Moscow, Spetsnaz forces turned the city streets into a deadly maze of ambushes and traps. In Tokyo, Special Forces teams coordinated strikes that left the aliens confused and angry. But it was not just the military that fought back. In Paris, civilians threw homemade explosives from apartment buildings. In Mumbai, factory workers used industrial equipment as weapons. In Lagos, ordinary people armed with whatever they could find refused to let the aliens advance through their neighborhoods. The Vorthak had expected fear and surrender. Instead, they found humans who became more dangerous as the situation grew more desperate. Every human they encountered seemed willing to die rather than submit. Back on HFY's flagship, reports flooded in from all 12 landing sites. The situation was the same everywhere. The humans were fighting back with a determination that made no sense. They were losing the battles but refusing to surrender. They kept fighting even when victory was impossible. Commander, we have lost contact with 3 landing teams, the communications officer reported, his voice shaking. The last transmission was of them requesting immediate evacuation. They said the humans were hunting them, Hunting them. The word made HFY's blood run cold. The Dominion did the hunting. The Dominion were the predators. How could these weak creatures be hunting Vorthak warriors? In Seoul, Kim's team had cornered a group of Vorthak soldiers in a narrow street. The aliens were trapped between collapsed buildings, their massive size working against them in the confined space. Kim spoke into a translator device they had captured from a fallen alien. "You came to our world uninvited," he said, his voice steady and cold. "You threatened our families. You thought we would surrender because we are small and weak, but you made one mistake." The Vorthak warriors raised their weapons, but Kim's team had already targeted every weak point in their armor. "You assumed that strength means size and weapons," Kim continued. "You never considered that real strength means fighting for something worth dying for. Now you will learn what humans can do when you threaten our home." The explosion that followed destroyed the entire street. Kim's team had already evacuated through prepared escape routes, but the trapped Vorthak had nowhere to go. By the end of the first day, the 47th Training Fleet had lost over 2,000 warriors. Not a single human city had surrendered. Not a single human military unit had retreated. The operation that was supposed to take less than a day had turned into a brutal struggle with no end in sight. HFY stood on his bridge, staring at casualty reports that should have been impossible. His young warriors had trained for easy occupations, not real war. They were being slaughtered in the streets by enemies they could barely see. He sent an emergency message back to the Dominion Council. The message was simple but carried terrible implications. Earth resistance is significant. Request immediate reinforcements. The humans are not surrendering. Repeat, the humans are not surrendering. For the first time in Galactic Dominion history, a routine training exercise had become a desperate call for help. The galaxy's greatest military power had discovered that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one that refuses to know it is beaten. Kim Tae-ho opened his eyes slowly. The room around him was made of smooth metal that glowed with a soft blue light. His head throbbed with pain and his body ached from dozens of injuries. The last thing he remembered was the explosion near the Han River, the desperate fight to extract his team, and then something massive hitting him from behind. He was captured. Kim tested his restraints carefully. Energy bands held his wrists and ankles to a metal examination table. The bands hummed with power but did not hurt him. He could move his head enough to see the room. It was large and filled with alien equipment that blinked and hummed with unknown purposes. A door opened with a soft hiss. 3 Vorthak entered, but these were different from the warriors Kim had fought in Seoul. They wore no armor, just simple robes marked with strange symbols. Their movements were careful and precise, more like scientists than soldiers. The tallest one approached Kim's table. When he spoke, his words came through a translator device on his chest. "Human specimen is awake. Begin documentation." Kim remained silent, watching everything. His SEAL training had prepared him for capture. The first rule was simple: observe everything, reveal nothing, and wait for opportunities. The lead Vorthak studied him with large eyes that reflected the blue light. "I am Chief Researcher Vexthai. You are aboard the Dominion flagship. You will not be harmed if you cooperate with our research." Kim spoke for the first time, his voice calm despite his situation. "Your training fleet asked for reinforcements. That means we hurt you badly enough to scare you." Vexthai tilted his head in what might have been surprise. "Scare is not accurate. We were unprepared for organized resistance. Your species was classified as weak based on biological data. We made tactical errors." "You made one big error," Kim said, meeting the alien's eyes. "You thought weak meant afraid." Over the next several days, Vexthai and his team studied Kim extensively. They scanned his body, analyzed his blood, and tested his reflexes. What confused them most was not his biology, but his behavior. Kim showed no fear, even restrained and helpless on an enemy ship surrounded by creatures that could kill him with ease. The human remained calm and alert. During one examination, Vexthai finally asked the question that had been troubling him. "Why do you not surrender? Your species cannot win this war. We have technology thousands of years more advanced than yours. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. Eventually, Earth will fall. Why sacrifice so many lives for an outcome you cannot change?" Kim was quiet for a long moment before answering. "Tell me something, Vexthai. When you chose Earth as a training ground, what did your intelligence reports say about humans? That your species was weak. No natural armor, no telepathy, no advanced abilities, fragile bodies, and primitive technology. And that was true, Kim said. Every fact in your report was accurate. But you missed the most important thing about humans. We did not survive because we were strong. We survived because we learned to be stronger. Vexthai did not understand, so Kim continued. Millions of years ago, humans were prey animals. Everything on our world was bigger, faster, stronger than us. We should have died out, but we did not. We learned to make weapons from rocks and sticks. We learned to work together to bring down creatures 10 times our size. We learned to adapt to every environment on our planet, from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. Kim shifted slightly in his restraints, his eyes never leaving Vexthai. Your species was born with armor and strength. You never had to learn how to survive without them. But humans spent millions of years learning that survival is not about what advantages you are born with. It is about what you are willing to do with what you have. The words seemed to disturb Vexthai. He turned away from Kim and spoke quietly to his assistants in his own language. They seemed to be arguing about something. Over the following weeks, Vexthai began asking Kim questions that had nothing to do with biology. He wanted to know about human history, human wars, human tactics. Kim realized the researcher was trying to understand not what humans were, but how humans thought. Kim decided to educate his captor. If the Dominion wanted to understand humans, he would teach them, and maybe that lesson would save Earth. You want to know why we fight? Kim asked one day. Let me tell you about a place called Stalingrad. One human city held off an entire army for months. The enemy had better weapons, more soldiers, and complete air superiority. The city was destroyed, millions died, but the humans there refused to surrender. Vexthai listened with growing unease as Kim described battle after battle from human history. The defense of Thermopylae, where 300 soldiers held off an army of thousands. The siege of Leningrad, where civilians ate leather and wallpaper rather than surrender. The beaches of Normandy, where men ran into certain death to free a continent. Your species has a concept we call scorched earth, Kim explained. When an enemy invades, you destroy everything valuable so they gain nothing. You burn your own cities, poison your own wells, destroy your own resources. You make victory so costly that winning becomes meaningless. That is insane, Vexthai said. And for the first time, Kim heard emotion in the alien's voice. Why would any species destroy itself rather than accept defeat? Because defeat is not acceptable when your home is at stake. Because some things are worth dying for. Because humans would rather burn the galaxy than let it be taken from us. Kim could see the fear growing in Vexthai's eyes. The researcher was beginning to understand what Earth's defenders already knew. The Dominion might have better weapons and stronger bodies, but humans had something far more dangerous. They had the will to win at any cost. During one examination, a guard named Crixall made a mistake. He leaned too close to Kim's table while adjusting the restraints. Kim had been waiting for exactly this kind of error. In one smooth motion, he twisted his body and grabbed the guard's arm with his teeth, biting down hard enough to draw blood. Crixall screamed and jerked backward. The moment of distraction was enough. Kim used the guard's momentum to break one of the energy restraints. He grabbed a medical tool from a nearby tray and jammed it into the control panel for his remaining bonds. The restraints failed. Kim rolled off the table and hit the ground running. Alarms began blaring throughout the research facility. Vexthai shouted orders, but Kim was already at the door. He had memorized every detail of the room during his captivity. He knew which panel controlled the door locks and exactly how much force it took to break them. The door opened and Kim ran into the corridor beyond. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of pursuit, but he had already planned his escape route. He had listened to every sound through the walls, mapped every patrol route, timed every guard rotation. This was what humans did. They adapted. They learned. They turned disadvantages into advantages. Kim found a service shaft and climbed into it, pulling the cover closed behind him. He could hear Vexthai's voice echoing through the ship's communication system. All security teams, the human specimen has escaped. He is unarmed and alone in an unfamiliar environment. This should be a simple recapture operation. Kim smiled grimly as he crawled through the darkness. Vexthai still did not understand. Being unarmed meant nothing to someone who had spent their entire life learning to turn anything into a weapon. Being alone meant freedom to act without worrying about protecting others. Being in an unfamiliar environment meant the enemy would not expect what came next. The researcher thought this was a simple recapture operation. Kim knew better. This was the beginning of his counterattack. As he moved through the ship's ventilation system, Kim thought about everything he had observed during his captivity. The layout of the research level, the locations of weapon storage, the patterns of guard rotations, the psychological weaknesses of his captors. The Dominion had captured a Navy SEAL thinking he was just a soldier. They did not realize they had brought aboard someone trained in exactly the kind of warfare they had never encountered. Someone who knew how to survive behind enemy lines. Someone who knew how to turn an enemy's strengths into weaknesses. Vextai had asked why humans did not surrender. Kim was about to show him the answer. The Dominion wanted to study humans as specimens in a laboratory. Now they were going to learn what it meant when the specimens started studying them back. The hunt was on. But the Vorthak were about to discover they were not the hunters in this scenario. They were the prey. Kim moved through the ventilation shafts like a ghost. The metal tunnels were cramped and dark, but he had spent days listening to the sounds of the ship. He knew where the shafts led, which rooms they connected, and when guards would pass beneath him. His first priority was weapons. Kim knew the location of the armory from the sounds he had heard during his captivity. Heavy footsteps, the hum of energy weapons being charged, the distinctive click of weapon racks. He had memorized it all. He found an access panel above the armory and waited. Patience was a weapon too. After 20 minutes, a single guard entered to inspect the weapons. Kim counted to 30, ensuring the guard was alone, then dropped through the ceiling panel. The guard barely had time to turn before Kim struck. A quick blow to the nerve cluster Vextai had accidentally revealed during the medical scans. The Vorthak collapsed, unconscious but alive. Kim had no interest in killing unnecessarily. Dead guards meant investigations. Unconscious guards meant confusion. He studied the alien weapons carefully. Most were too large for human hands, designed for creatures 3 times his size. But there were tools, maintenance equipment, and small devices he could adapt. Kim selected items methodically: a plasma cutter, a communication scrambler, and several energy cells. Then he did something the Vorthak would never expect. He left a message on the armory computer terminal using the translator interface, simple words in both human English and the Dominion language. Lesson 1. Your security protocols assume enemies will act like you do. I am not you. Kim vanished back into the ventilation system before anyone discovered what had happened. Over the next 3 days, Kim moved through the ship like a nightmare. He did not attack directly. Instead, he sabotaged systems in ways that looked like accidents. A cooling unit failed here. A door lock malfunctioned there. Life support in one section flickered on and off randomly. Each incident was small, but together they created an atmosphere of paranoia. The crew began to suspect each other. Was someone helping the human? Were the systems really failing, or was something else happening? Vextai watched the security footage obsessively. He saw glimpses of Kim in the corridors, brief shadows in the ventilation grates, but never enough to predict where the human would appear next. The researcher was beginning to understand what Kim had tried to teach him. Humans did not fight like Vorthak. They did not charge forward with superior strength. They attacked from unexpected angles, used psychological pressure, and turned the enemy's own systems against them. On the 4th day, Kim struck directly for the first time. He appeared in the ship's main control room during a shift change. The crew there had never seen combat. They were technicians and operators who thought the human was somewhere far away in the lower decks. Kim moved with brutal efficiency. He used the plasma cutter to destroy critical control panels, not randomly but with surgical precision. He hit the long-range communications array first, cutting the flagship off from the rest of the fleet. Then he damaged the weapons targeting system. Finally, he accessed the internal communication network. His voice echoed through every speaker on the ship. Attention crew of the Dominion flagship. You came to Earth expecting us to surrender. You thought humans were weak because we lack armor and natural weapons. But you never asked why a weak species controls an entire planet. Kim moved while he spoke, knowing security teams were already racing toward his location. We control Earth because we learned to hunt creatures stronger than us. We learned to plan, to adapt, to turn every disadvantage into an advantage. You have strength and technology. We have something better. We have experience fighting enemies we cannot defeat through force alone. He reached the emergency escape pods exactly where he had planned to be. This ship is now my territory. You are in my environment, following my rules. Welcome to human warfare. Kim activated a series of programs he had planted throughout the ship's computer system during his sabotage runs. Lights began flickering in random patterns. Doors locked and unlocked without command. Temperature controls went haywire, making some sections freezing and others unbearably hot. Then he sealed himself in an escape pod and launched it, not away from the ship, but into the ship's cargo bay. The pod crashed through the bay doors and embedded itself in a stack of supply containers. Kim emerged and immediately disappeared into the maze of cargo. Vexthai arrived at the control room to find his technicians in a state of panic. The damage Kim had done would take weeks to repair. But worse than the physical damage was the psychological impact. The entire crew now knew that a single unarmed human had penetrated their most secure areas, damaged critical systems, and escaped. The chief researcher made a decision. He needed to talk to the human again, but this time not as a researcher studying a specimen. He needed to negotiate. He used the communication system to broadcast throughout the ship. Kim Tae-ho, I know you can hear me. I want to talk. No tricks, no traps. I am beginning to understand what you tried to teach me. Please, we need to communicate. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then Kim's voice came back, originating from somewhere in the lower decks. You want to talk now? After you invaded my world, killed my people, and treated me like a laboratory animal? What changed, Vexthai? I was wrong, the researcher admitted, and his crew could hear the strain in his voice. The Dominion was wrong. We judged your species by your physical characteristics and missed what made you dangerous. We made a mistake. Yes, you did, Kim replied. But mistakes have consequences. You came to Earth for an easy victory. Now you are trapped on your own ship with an enemy you do not understand. How does it feel to be the weak one? Kim had found the ship's main data core during his explorations. Now he accessed it, downloading everything he could about Dominion technology, tactics, and strategy. The information flowed into a small data device he had taken from the research lab. While Vexthai tried to locate him, Kim worked at a computer terminal. He was not just stealing data. He was learning how the Dominion fought, how they thought, how they organized their military. Every piece of information was a weapon he could use. But Kim was also preparing his final lesson for the Dominion. He accessed the ship's external communication array, the one he had damaged but not destroyed. With careful work, he bypassed his own sabotage and created a narrow-band transmission. He began recording a message. This is Lieutenant Kim Tae-ho of Earth to all Dominion forces. You are listening to a human, a member of the species you classified as weak and primitive. I am currently in control of your flagship. Your commander is unable to stop me. Your security cannot find me. Your technology means nothing against tactics you have never encountered. Kim moved to a new location while the message transmitted. Knowing the crew would try to trace it, I am sending you detailed recordings of everything I have done aboard this vessel. Study them carefully. Learn from them. Because what I have accomplished here, millions of humans are learning to do across Earth you wanted to teach us about the Dominion. Instead, you have become our teachers. Thank you for the education. He attached files showing his movements through the ship, his sabotage techniques, his psychological warfare methods. Then he included something else. Tactical analyses of Vorthak weaknesses, patterns in their security protocols, and vulnerabilities in their ship designs. The message broadcast to the entire Dominion fleet orbiting Earth. Every ship received it. Every commander watched as a single human systematically dismantled their most advanced vessel, using nothing but intelligence and determination. Vexthai watched the broadcast from the bridge, his body rigid with something the Vorthak rarely felt: fear. Not fear of death, but fear of the implications. If one human could do this, what could billions of humans do if given time to learn and adapt? The answer came quickly. Reports flooded in from Earth. Human forces had stopped retreating. They were studying Dominion tactics, adapting to alien technology, and beginning to turn the tide of battle. What had started as a one-sided invasion was becoming a brutal stalemate. Kim's voice came over the communication system one more time. Final lesson, Vexthai. You asked why humans do not surrender. It is because we know something you never learned. The strongest predator is not the one with the biggest teeth or the hardest armor. It is the one that learns from every fight and comes back stronger. You cannot defeat a species that treats every loss as a lesson and every defeat as motivation. Deep in the cargo bay, Kim prepared for the next phase of his plan. He had damaged the ship, stolen their data, and broadcast his methods to all of Earth. But he was not finished. The Dominion needed to learn one more lesson about humans. Sometimes the prey becomes the hunter. The broadcast from Kim Tae-ho reached far beyond the Dominion fleet orbiting Earth. It traveled across the galaxy through the faster-than-light communication network, arriving at Dominion command centers on dozens of worlds. Military commanders watched in disbelief as a single human turned their flagship into a hunting ground. On the Quilith homeworld, the Council of Minds gathered in their crystalline chamber. These were the most powerful telepaths in the galaxy, beings who could reach across star systems with their thoughts. They had been monitoring the Earth situation with growing concern. Elder Velnash, the oldest and strongest of the Quilith, spoke without moving his lips. His thoughts reached every mind in the council. This human presents an anomaly. A single warrior should not be able to cause such disruption. We must investigate the human mind directly and determine what makes them dangerous. The council agreed. They would send their best mind warriors to break Kim Tae-ho psychologically. Where physical force had failed, mental domination would succeed. The Quilith had never encountered a mind they could not control. 3 days later, a Quilith strike team arrived at the Vorthak flagship. They moved through the corridors like flowing water, their pale blue skin glowing softly in the dim light. The Vorthak crew gave them wide berth. Even mighty warriors feared the mindbreakers. The Quilith did not need to hunt for Kim. They could sense his thoughts from anywhere on the ship. They found him in a maintenance area, surrounded by equipment he had been modifying. Kim did not run when they appeared. He simply waited, watching them with calm eyes. The lead Quilith, a warrior named HFY, stepped forward. "Human, your resistance ends now. We are Quilith. We do not fight with weapons or strength. We dominate through the mind itself. Surrender your thoughts to us and the pain will be minimal." Kim stood slowly, setting down the tool he had been holding. "You want to look inside my head? Go ahead, but I warn you, you might not like what you find there." HFY almost laughed. Humans were so arrogant. This would be quick. The 3 Quilith reached out with their minds, piercing through the barriers of Kim's consciousness. They expected to find fear, doubt, maybe some stubborn resistance. Instead, they found something they had never encountered before. Kim's mind was not organized like other species. Where most beings had structured thoughts and clear memories, Kim's consciousness was a labyrinth of tactical scenarios, backup plans, and contingencies. Every thought connected to a dozen others. Every memory linked to strategic applications. But that was not what broke the Quilith. It was the memories themselves. They saw through Kim's eyes as he experienced human warfare. The beaches of Normandy, where thousands of men ran toward machine gun fire knowing most would die. The frozen mountains of Korea, where soldiers fought in temperatures that killed as surely as bullets. The jungles where men survived for weeks eating insects and drinking contaminated water, refusing to give up. They felt Kim's training, every moment of suffering designed to push humans beyond their breaking points. The drowning simulations, the extreme cold exposure. The psychological pressure meant to crush the weak and forge the survivors into weapons. HFY tried to push deeper, to plant fear directly into Kim's mind. Instead, he encountered something that made him recoil in horror. Kim was not afraid of death. He had accepted it years ago as part of his job. Fear had no power over someone who had already made peace with dying. Worse still, Kim pushed back. He had been trained in mental discipline, in controlling his thoughts under extreme stress. While the Quilith tried to break him, he turned his mind into a weapon, forcing them to experience what humans felt when fighting for survival. The telepathic feedback was too much. HFY screamed and collapsed, blood flowing from his nose. The other 2 Quilith broke contact and stumbled backward, their minds reeling from what they had experienced. Kim remained standing, his expression unchanged. "I tried to warn you. Human minds are not like yours. We evolved fighting each other, lying to each other, surviving against other humans who wanted to kill us. Our minds are weapons shaped by millions of years of warfare. You cannot dominate what you cannot understand." The Quilith fled, carrying their unconscious leader. They had never retreated from a mental battle before. The report they sent back to their homeworld was simple but terrifying. Human minds were traps, mazes designed to destroy anyone who entered them. While the Quilith learned their lesson, events on Earth took a dramatic turn. Human forces worldwide had studied Kim's broadcast carefully. They learned from his tactics, adapted his strategies, and began implementing guerrilla warfare on a global scale. Captain Park, Sujin of the South Korean Special Forces, led her team through the ruins of Busan. The city had been heavily damaged in the initial invasion, but the humans had not abandoned it. Instead, they had turned it into a killing ground. Park's team moved through underground tunnels they had prepared before the invasion. The Dominion forces controlled the surface, but humans owned everything beneath. They struck from below, destroyed alien supply lines, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. But Park was about to face a new threat. The Nexari had arrived. The shapeshifters infiltrated human forces by taking the appearance of soldiers, civilians, and commanders. They could mimic anyone perfectly, copying not just appearance but voice and mannerisms. A Nexari could replace a general and no one would know until it was too late, or so they thought. Park gathered her team in a secure bunker deep beneath the city. She looked at each soldier carefully, studying their faces, their posture, their eyes. "Listen carefully," she said. "The Nexari are here. They can look like anyone, but they cannot be us." One of the soldiers, a young man named Jae-sung, spoke up. "How do we identify them, Captain?" "If they look and sound exactly like us, how can we tell?" Park smiled grimly. "Because humans are not perfect copies of each other. We have tells, habits, small things we do without thinking. A real human has memories, experiences, emotional responses that cannot be faked perfectly." She pulled out a photograph showing her team during training 6 months ago. Everyone here knows what happened the day this photo was taken. We all remember the details, the feelings, the small moments that made that day unique. A Nexari can copy appearance, but they cannot copy memories they never experienced. Over the next week, Park's team developed a system. They used shared experiences, inside jokes, and personal knowledge to verify identities. They asked questions only the real person would know how to answer. They watched for tiny inconsistencies in behavior. The Nexari infiltrators found themselves trapped. Every time they tried to replace a human, they were discovered. The humans had learned to see through perfect mimicry by looking for imperfect humanity. Park's team caught 5 Nexari infiltrators in 2 weeks. But instead of killing them, she did something unexpected. She kept them alive and used them to feed false information back to the Dominion. The shapeshifters became unwitting double agents, spreading lies and confusion through enemy ranks. Back on the Vorthak flagship, Vexthai received reports from both failed operations. The Quilith mental attack had been repelled. The Nexari infiltration had been compromised. Every strategy the Dominion tried was being countered by humans who learned faster than anyone thought possible. The researcher sat in his quarters, reviewing all the data he had collected about humans. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. The Dominion had not invaded a weak species. They had attacked a species that had spent millions of years perfecting the art of survival against impossible odds. Vexthai accessed the restricted files, the ones that detailed every species the Dominion had ever conquered. He ran comparative analyses looking at resistance patterns, adaptation rates, and combat effectiveness. The results made his blood run cold. Humans were adapting faster than any species in recorded history. They were learning Dominion tactics in weeks when it should take years. They were reverse engineering alien technology almost overnight. Most terrifying of all, they were sharing information globally with a coordination level that suggested true unity of purpose. Kim Tae-ho had been right. Humans were not strong because of natural advantages. They were strong because they learned from everything and never made the same mistake twice. The researcher began writing a report for the Dominion Council. But he knew they would not listen. They would see his conclusions as defeatist, as weakness. The Dominion had never lost a war. They could not imagine that a primitive species could teach them anything. But Vexthai had seen the truth. The Dominion had started a war they might not be able to win, not because humans were stronger, but because they were willing to pay any price for victory. And the longer the war continued, the more humans would learn. Somewhere on the ship, Kim was still free, still planning, still teaching the Dominion exactly what happened when you underestimated humanity. The invasion that was supposed to take one day had stretched into months. The easy conquest had become a nightmare, and Earth's defenders were just getting started. 6 months had passed since the Dominion's invasion began. The operation that was supposed to take one day had become the longest military campaign in Galactic Dominion history. More shocking still, the Dominion was losing. Commander Gorthak stood in the same grand hall where the War Council had once laughed at humanity's weakness. Now the hall was silent except for the sound of incoming casualty reports. The numbers were staggering. 15,000 Vorthak warriors lost, 30 Quillith mindbreakers permanently damaged, 70 Nexari infiltrators captured or killed. But worse than the casualties was the loss of territory. Human forces had not just defended Earth. They had captured Dominion ships, learned their technology, and begun launching counterattacks against Dominion outposts in nearby systems. The holographic display showed the current situation. Human vessels, built from captured alien technology but modified with human engineering, moved through space in formations the Dominion had never seen. They did not fight like any known species. They used unpredictable tactics, sacrificed pieces to gain advantages, and adapted to every strategy the Dominion employed. Gorthak's massive hands clenched into fists. How did this happen? They were supposed to be weak. Our intelligence was clear. Vexthai stepped forward. The researcher looked tired, his usually bright eyes dim with exhaustion. Our intelligence was accurate but incomplete. We measured human weakness correctly. We just failed to measure human adaptability. They learn from every engagement. They share information instantly across their entire species. What one human discovers, all humans know within hours. Then we destroy their communications, suggested a Quillith commander. Cut them off from each other. We tried, Vexthai said quietly. They adapted. They use everything from light signals to sound patterns to chemical markers. Destroy one communication method and they invent 3 more. You cannot stop a species that treats every problem as a puzzle to solve. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the hall. A fleet had just entered the system. Not a Dominion fleet, a human fleet. The view screen activated, showing dozens of vessels approaching. They were strange hybrids, combining human and alien technology in ways that should not work but somehow did. Leading them was the modified Vorthak flagship that Kim Taeho had captured 3 months ago. A communication request came through. Gorthak accepted it, and Kim's face appeared on the screen. He wore a uniform that combined Earth military style with practical modifications for space warfare. Behind him stood a mixed crew of humans and alien defectors who had chosen to join the human cause. "Commander Gorthak," Kim said, his voice calm and professional. "I am Admiral Kim Taeho of the Earth Defense Fleet. I am here to discuss terms." "Terms?" Gorthak roared. "You think you can dictate terms to the Dominion? We have ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. And in those 3,000 years you never fought anyone like us," Kim replied. "You conquered species that were strong or species that were weak, but you never encountered a species that became stronger through fighting. Every battle we lose teaches us how to win the next one. Every defeat makes us more dangerous." Kim gestured and new data appeared on the screen. Battle analyses, tactical breakdowns, strategic assessments, all showing the same pattern. The longer the war continued, the more effective human forces became. "Look at the trend lines," Kim said. "In the first month, we lost 90% of our engagements. In the second month, 70%. Last month, we won more battles than we lost. Next month, we will dominate. The month after that, we will begin taking Dominion worlds." "Impossible," snarled a Nexari representative. "Our technology is superior." "Was superior," Kim corrected. "We have been studying your ships for months. We understand your weapons, your shields, your engines. More importantly, we have improved them. Human engineers have identified 17 major design flaws in Dominion vessels. We have fixed those flaws in our ships." Park Soo-jin appeared, on screen beside Kim. She had been promoted to colonel and commanded the ground forces. "Your ground tactics are 3,000 years old," she said. "Unchanged because you always won. But we have been fighting each other for our entire history. We know 100 different ways to wage war that you have never imagined." The Dominion commanders looked at each other with growing unease. Everything the humans said was true. The casualty reports proved it. The captured territory proved it. The damaged pride proved it. Kim continued, his voice taking on a harder edge. "So here are your options. Option 1, continue fighting. We will lose more people and so will you. But we will learn faster than you can adapt. Eventually Earth will win and we will take your territory, your technology, and your position in the galaxy." Option 2, Gorthak asked reluctantly. "We negotiate a peace as equals. Earth becomes an independent world, recognized by the Dominion as sovereign territory. In exchange, we stop our counterattacks and establish trade relations. We might even teach you some of what we know about warfare. Because there are threats in this galaxy that neither of us has faced yet. The Dominion commanders erupted into argument. Some wanted to keep fighting, refusing to believe a primitive species could truly defeat them. Others, including Vexthai, understood the mathematics of the situation. Humans were learning exponentially. Time favored Earth, not the Dominion. Gorthak raised his hand for silence. He looked at Kim with something that might have been respect. You said there are threats neither of us has faced. What do you mean? Kim's expression grew serious. Your intelligence files show dozens of unexplored regions of space, areas where ships disappear and colonies go silent. You have been so focused on conquering known space that you stopped exploring the unknown. But humans are curious. We want to know what is out there, and whatever it is, it might be dangerous to all of us. It was a masterful diplomatic move. Kim was offering the Dominion a way to accept peace without admitting defeat. Instead of losing to humans, they could gain allies against future threats. It was face-saving and practical. The War Council deliberated for 3 hours. Finally, Gorthak returned to the communication channel. We will agree to negotiations, but on one condition. You must prove that humans can truly fight alongside the Dominion as equals. Name your test, Kim said. There is a world on the edge of our territory called Thaldris. It has been under attack by unknown raiders for 2 months. We have sent 3 fleets and all have been destroyed. If your human forces can defend that world, we will recognize Earth as an equal power. Kim consulted with his officers briefly, then nodded. Agreed. Send us the coordinates. 2 weeks later, the human fleet arrived at Thaldris. The planet was beautiful, with purple oceans and silver forests, but it was under siege by ships unlike anything humans or the Dominion had seen. The raiders were fast, aggressive, and used weapons that phased through normal shields. The Dominion observers watched from a safe distance, expecting the humans to fail as they had. Instead, they witnessed something remarkable. The human fleet did not try to match the raiders in direct combat. Instead, Kim analyzed their attack patterns, identified their weaknesses, and developed a counter-strategy in real time. He used the terrain, created ambushes, and coordinated attacks that confused the raiders. Park led ground forces that evacuated Thaldris civilians while the fleet fought above. She organized the evacuation with precision that impressed even the cynical Dominion commanders. After 6 hours of combat, the raiders retreated. The human fleet had taken damage but survived. More importantly, they had captured 2 raider ships intact for study. Gorthak watched the battle footage in silence. Then he spoke the words that would change galactic history. The Dominion recognizes Earth as an independent and equal power. Let it be recorded that humanity has earned their place among the stars not through conquest, but through courage and capability. The peace treaty was signed 1 month later. It included provisions that shocked many in the Dominion. Earth would establish a military academy where alien species could learn human warfare tactics. The Dominion would share advanced technology with humanity. Both sides would work together to explore and defend against unknown threats. Kim returned to Earth as humanity's first galactic admiral. He stood on the grounds of the new academy, watching the first class of mixed human and alien students begin their training. Beside him, Park supervised the curriculum development. Do you think they will actually learn? Park asked quietly. They will learn, Kim replied, because we will teach them what the Dominion never understood. Strength is not about what you are born with. It is about what you are willing to become. Across the galaxy, the word spread. The humans of Earth had accomplished the impossible. They had turned an invasion into an alliance, defeat into victory, and weakness into strength. They had proven that sometimes the most dangerous species is not the one with the biggest weapons or the strongest armor. It is the one that never stops learning. In the halls of the Dominion capital, young warriors now studied human military history alongside their own. They learned about Thermopylae and Stalingrad, about asymmetric warfare and psychological operations. They learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not technology or biology. It was the absolute refusal to give up. And in doing so, they learned to respect the small, fragile species from. 5 years had passed since the treaty was signed. The Earth Defense Academy had become the most prestigious military institution in the galaxy. Young warriors from dozens of species came to learn from the humans who had done the impossible. Admiral Kim Tae-ho walked through the training grounds, watching mixed teams of humans and aliens running tactical exercises. A squad of Vorthak soldiers moved through an urban warfare course under the instruction of human sergeants. Nearby, Quilith telepaths practiced mental, discipline techniques that humans had developed over centuries of meditation and focus, training. The irony was not lost on Kim. The species that had come to conquer Earth were now paying to learn from humans. Colonel Park, Sujin joined him on the observation deck. She had taken on the role of Academy Commandant, overseeing the training of over 10,000 students from 40 different species. The new class is showing promise, Park said, reviewing data on her tablet. The Vorthak are finally learning that charging forward is not always the answer. The Quileth are understanding that mental strength means more than just telepathic power. And the Nexari? Kim asked. Park smiled slightly. They are the best students. Shapeshifters understand adaptation naturally. They just needed to learn that physical adaptation is only one kind. Mental and tactical adaptation matters more. A young Vorthak cadet approached and saluted. His name was Krelvan, son of Commander Gorthak. The old commander had sent his own child to learn from the humans. A gesture of respect that spoke volumes. Admiral Kim, Colonel Park, I have a question, Krelvan said in carefully practiced human English. Speak, Kim replied. I have been studying the Battle of Seoul, your first engagement with our forces. The tactical analysis shows you were outnumbered 50-1. Your weapons could barely damage our armor. By all logical calculations, you should have retreated or died. Why did you keep fighting? Kim considered the question carefully. It was one he had been asked many times by alien cadets who could not understand human stubbornness. Tell me, Krelvan, what did your people teach you about warfare before you came here? That strength wins battles. That superior force guarantees victory. That the strong dominate the weak. And what have you learned here? The young Vorthak was quiet for a moment, thinking. That strength has many forms. That victory depends on more than force. That the weak can become strong through determination and learning. Good, Kim said. But you are missing the most important lesson. We kept fighting in Seoul not because we thought we could win. We fought because surrender was worse than death. We fought because our families, our homes, our entire species depended on us. When you fight for something bigger than yourself, impossible odds become irrelevant. Krelvan nodded slowly, beginning to understand. My father told me something before I came here. He said the Dominion's greatest weakness was that we fought for glory and conquest. But humans fight for survival and each other. He said that makes you more dangerous than any weapon. Your father is a wise warrior, Park said. He learned what many in the Dominion still do not understand. The question is, what will your generation do with this knowledge? The cadet straightened. We will be better than our ancestors. We will fight not for conquest, but for protection. We will remember what Earth taught us. After Krelvan left, Kim and Park continued their walk. They passed training halls where humans taught aliens about guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, and adaptive tactics. In another building, alien instructors taught humans about advanced technology, telepathic discipline, and energy manipulation. It had become a true exchange of knowledge, both sides learning from each other. They reached Kim's office, a simple room overlooking the academy grounds. On the wall hung a photograph from the Battle of Seoul, showing Kim's original SEAL team. Half of them had not survived the war. Their sacrifice was never far from Kim's mind. Park noticed him looking at the photo. Do you think they would be proud of what we have built here? She asked quietly. I think they would be surprised, Kim replied. We went from fighting for survival to teaching our enemies how to fight better. It seems strange, but necessary, Park added. The treaty brought peace, but peace requires trust. And trust requires understanding. A communication alert chimed. Kim activated the holographic display, and Vexitai's face appeared. The Vorthak researcher had become Earth's primary liaison to the Dominion Council. Admiral Kim, Colonel Park, I have news. The Dominion Council has received reports of increased raider activity in the Outer Rim. 7 colonies have gone silent in the past month. They are requesting human assistance. Kim and Park exchanged glances. This was the moment they had been preparing for. Not war between the Dominion and Earth, but cooperation against a common threat. Send us the details, Kim said. We will deploy a joint task force. Half human crews, half Dominion crews. It is time to show the galaxy what we can accomplish together. Already arranged, Vexthai said, and there might have been approval in his voice. Commander Gorthak will lead the Dominion forces. He specifically requested to serve under your command. That was significant. A Dominion commander volunteering to serve under a human admiral. It showed how much had changed in 5 years. After the communication ended, Kim began preparing for the mission. He selected teams from the academy, mixing species deliberately. Humans who had learned alien technology, Vorthak who had mastered human tactics, Quilith who had developed new ways to use their mental abilities, Nexari who had learned that infiltration could be used for intelligence gathering rather than sabotage. The joint fleet departed Earth 3 days later. 20 vessels, each with mixed crews working together. It was a sight that would have been impossible 5 years ago. They arrived at the outer rim to find devastation. Entire colonies destroyed, populations missing, ships torn apart by unknown weapons. The raiders had grown bolder and more destructive, but they had not faced a united force of humans and Dominion species. Working together, the battle that followed would be recorded in history as the engagement at Thalmor Station. The raiders attacked with overwhelming force, expecting the defenders to break as they had before. Instead, they encountered something new. Human tactical flexibility combined with Dominion firepower. Quilith telepaths coordinating with human strategists to predict enemy movements. Vorthak warriors following human-designed battle plans that used their strength efficiently. Nexari scouts gathering intelligence using methods they had learned at the academy. The raiders retreated after 6 hours, having lost a third of their fleet. For the first time, they had encountered organized resistance they could not overcome. Commander Gorthak stood on the bridge beside Kim as they surveyed the battlefield. 5 years ago, I would have charged forward and lost everything, Gorthak admitted. Your tactics saved countless lives today, both human and Dominion. Your warriors executed those tactics perfectly, Kim replied. This victory belongs to all of us, it was true. The success had required every species contributing their strengths while covering each other's weaknesses. Alone, neither humans nor the Dominion could have won. Together they were formidable. News of the victory spread across the galaxy. Other species that had remained neutral began reaching out to Earth and the Dominion. They wanted to learn to join the alliance to be part of something new. The galaxy was changing. The old order of conquest and domination was giving way to cooperation and mutual defense. And at the center of it all was Earth, the small blue planet whose people had refused to surrender. Back at the academy, Kim stood before a graduating class of 500 cadets from 12 different species. They had spent 2 years learning to fight together, trust each other, and understand that diversity was strength rather than weakness. You came here from different worlds with different abilities, Kim told them. Some of you are stronger than humans will ever be. Some of you have mental powers we can barely comprehend. Some of you can change your very shape. He paused, looking at each face in the crowd. But you all learned the same lesson that Earth learned when the Dominion invaded us. True strength is not about what you can do alone. It is about what you can accomplish together. It is about adapting, learning, and never giving up. The graduates stood at attention, a mix of species that 5 years ago would have been impossible to imagine in the same room peacefully. The galaxy is changing, Kim continued. There are threats out there we have not yet faced. There are mysteries we have not yet solved. But whatever comes, we will face it together, not as conquerors and conquered, but as allies and friends. Park watched from the side, feeling pride in what they had built. The academy had become more than a military school. It was a symbol of what the galaxy could become when species chose cooperation over conflict. That evening, Kim returned to his quarters and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, new threats were forming. New mysteries waited to be discovered. New challenges would test everything they had built. But for the first time in galactic history, dozens of species would face those challenges together. United not by fear or domination, but by mutual respect and shared purpose. Earth had started as the victim of an invasion. Humans had been classified as weak, primitive, and insignificant. But through determination, adaptability, and the refusal to accept defeat,